on this episode of the Girl Talk podcast.
What is my priority spiritually? If I want to grow spiritually, that doesn't happen just by accident.
Right.
That happens by intention and discipline.
Yeah.
Hello there. You're listening to the Girl Talk podcast, brought to you by our friends at Fox Toyota of East Tennessee. My name is Carol.
My name is Kelly.
My name's Tricia.
And we're so glad you've joined us today. Around the table, we're going to be talking about the pressure of doing it all. And I think it's greater this time of year than any other time of the year.
Yeah, for sure.
Certainly.
So let's dive right in, girls. Where do you think the pressure to do it all comes from? What's your perspective on that?
Well, I think there's an internal and an external on
Okay.
that. I think the external is comparison.
Yeah.
Right? You see
Okay.
everything else happening. Also, there is an urgency to the season because you got to get things in the mail if they're
Right.
going somewhere. And there is a date where everyone stops and celebrates. So there is a bit of an urgency to it that's an external thing. But I know for me, sometimes I feel this internal pressure, like I'm not doing enough. Usually comes from maybe an insecurity that I need to be doing more. And so I will try to push beyond what I can do.
Yeah. What about you?
I also think that the world is really cool. And there's lots of fun things to
Like
do.
that.
Yeah.
And so
true.
we have more opportunities now
Sure.
than our grandparents ever had to do things, to go places, to
Right.
Experience.
have
Yeah.
to have experiences, to have careers, to be it all, to do it all.
Yeah.
And we want to in many ways because there's so many really cool things to do.
Yeah.
So I think I'm with, but I'm also with TK. I think there's a lot of that internal pressure of we're driven women, and I don't know about y'all, but when I was growing up, people always said you can be whatever you want to be. We just work really hard at it. You can
Yeah.
grow up to be anything you want.
Yeah.
And so we start off life with that kind of warped mentality of
Yeah.
do it all, be it all. You can do it all, and you can do it all at the same time.
Yeah, I don't remember who said it, but I heard somebody speaking one time, and they were talking about work-life balance, because I think this is where we kind of get into trouble as women, because we feel the responsibility to bear the weight of what our family needs, and also if we work outside the home, to bear the responsibility and the requirements of what our job requires.
Sure.
And trying to balance those two just never really happens. Like, I think this person said, there's no such thing as work-life balance. And I believe that's true, because there's only so much of you, you know, and it's not you. I don't want a mom who's 50% there.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, and I know my kid doesn't want a mom that's 50% there. I mean, sometimes she probably wishes I was 50% there, but you know, and my employer doesn't want an employee that's 50% there.
Yeah.
And so I think we have
That's a good point.
unrealistic expectations that I don't know about y'all, but I place on myself just from the standpoint of I want to give everybody my best, and that's not always realistic.
Yeah.
Everybody can't get your best.
I still remember watching television shows. Sometimes they were black and white. But they were shows
Showing
to
your
Beaver.
age.
Yeah,
Right.
right.
yeah.
That's what I'm talking about. That had
Yeah.
the mom who had the apron, and the house was clean, and the husband would come home, and they would have a dinner, and they would talk, and it all seemed so in control.
Yeah.
And my life feels so chaotic. And so I keep thinking of those images, even when they're not on top of mind, they're still somewhere in there.
Yeah.
That I'm like, I'm not meeting that. I'm not doing that. Which I think probably was unrealistic even then, but even more so when you add all of the different things in our lifestyles.
Yeah.
Yeah. We absolutely lead different lives than our grandparents did.
Well, and now we have more, like you were saying before, we have more tools than ever to help streamline those processes, but those end up being distractions instead of helps.
Sure.
You know, a lot of times technology is a great blessing, but it also is a great distraction. So you have like these phones in our pockets that were supposed to make life so much simpler. And for a lot of things, they did. I mean, you can answer an email from anywhere now. You don't have to be sitting in front of your computer. But should you be answering email at your kid's soccer game? Probably not, you know?
Right.
And so it's a catch-22. I think you have to be realistic about and okay with setting some boundaries in your life, because if you don't, you end up feeling like that only superheroes can live this life and be successful at it.
Yeah. And we weren't created to be superheroes.
Yeah.
We weren't created also to be whatever we wanted to be.
Yeah.
You know, we do have that, at least for me, I had that family growing up that said, be whatever you want to be. Grow up and do whatever you want to do. And what I try to remind myself now, and not that that was bad. I'm not trying to say in any way, shape, or form that we shouldn't say to our kids, grow up and you can be whatever you want to be.
Yeah.
But we should also say to our kids, God made you for a purpose.
Sure.
And there is a purpose for which you are crafted and created and being refined throughout your whole life. Ask God what it is that you're supposed to be.
Yeah.
And I promise you, it ain't Superwoman.
Yeah.
Right.
That's not what you're called to be.
No Superwoman.
Yeah.
I tell you, when I'm trying to be Superwoman and trying to do it all, the first thing that falls away, self-care. Now, and that first, that sounds selfless, but it's not really. Because if I'm not taking care of myself, then I'm not going to be the kind of mom that I want to be, or the wife or the friend or the employee or the person that I want to be. So when we try to do it all, something is going to fall off the back of the plate.
Yeah.
So what's that going to be? And if it's self-care,
Yeah.
that has a ripple effect.
Sure it does. You ever read a quote and it like messes with you for days, and then you find it, you keep going back to it. I'm not going to say the quote exactly because it's long since left my brain, and I'm of the age where when something leaves my brain, I should have written it down, but I didn't. So the quote basically said, show me what you do in your spare time, and I will show you what shapes you. And it hit me so incredibly hard because my idle time is time that I've often looked at as just throwaway time, like when I'm waiting on my kid at dance, or I'm waiting on to finish practice, or I'm waiting to pick them up from school, or waiting to do all those things. And it just gave me pause to like, what am I doing during that spare time that is an inconvenience for me, that is turning me into the woman that I want to be? And and the answers were nothing. Like, I'm doing nothing. Yeah. I want to be here in my spiritual walk, or in my motherhood, or in my job, but the things I'm spending my spare time doing are not contributing to any of those goals that I have. And y'all know me, I'm a creative, so sometimes goals make me squirm a little bit, but I need them. And so I really took some time to figure out, like, okay, what is my priority? What is my priority spiritually? If I want to grow spiritually, that doesn't happen just by accident.
Right.
That happens by intention and discipline.
Yeah.
So what am I spending my spare time doing to strengthen myself spiritually? Just like if you were to go to the gym, if you're like, I want to run a 5K, okay, that means you got to put your tennis shoes on and you got to start walking and running. You got to start walking and running, and you don't just do it one time and then run a marathon, right? But yet, with the other things in our lives, I think we just like somehow lose our minds and think it's just going to happen because we want it to. And it doesn't. It takes discipline and intention. And for me, that was a big thing that I noticed in my own life. When I sit down and think what my priorities are and who I want to be, then all of that kind of falls into place. If I will prioritize the things in my life that really matter.
Yeah.
But my schedule says I'm prioritizing something else that really doesn't matter. And so getting those two things for me to get closer together, and I don't do it perfectly, but that was a big like wake-up call for me. It's like, this idle time doesn't have to be idle time. I can do something to strengthen myself spiritually or physically. I can go for a walk, or I can, plug in a good book that I want to read, all the things. And it's helping me to get those two closer together to where I don't feel the pressure to be Superwoman. I just feel the pressure to do things to invest in the woman that I want to be. Does that make sense?
Yes, but what you're talking about takes real self-reflection.
Yeah.
Because I'm hearing you say that, and I'm like, I don't think I've ever done that. I've ever looked at how I'm using my spare time, and I'm thinking about in the doctor's office waiting, or picking up my son in car line, or any of those things. Like, what am I doing? Because that when you say spare time, I think, what is it? What is my spare time? But I do have it.
Yeah, yeah.
And it's time that I'll spend watching a show on the Food Network, which doesn't help me get to who the person is that I want to be. Yeah. But it's interesting you said that, because I'm gonna celebrate a victory.
Yeah.
Because I don't always do that.
Good.
So I'm gonna celebrate a victory. I realized that when I was driving in my car, I have options for things to do. And oftentimes I'll listen to the Light FM because that feeds me during the day. I also added something to my repertoire to stay encouraged. I downloaded a book from the Libby app,
from the library,
the public library. So it's an audio book, and it's a Lisa TerKeurst book, who we've talked about a lot.
Love her.
Christian, biblical author, podcaster, speaker. Anyway, she has this book called Uninvited. And so now when I have time, and it may be only 16 minutes driving from here to there, I'm listening to that instead of something else or thinking about something that's taking me off track. But that's helping me remember in those off minutes when I'm driving down the road that God loves me and He's invited me. So that's an example of how I've tried to help myself in some of that spare time. But I hadn't even thought about it until you mentioned it. Like that.
I have been, and y'all know I've talked about it on the podcast before, that I have been so completely convicted by the screen time app that you can set on your phone, because somebody, asked me how much screen time you're having. And when you look at that screen time, what could you be doing with 4 extra hours a day, Right. And so that's how God works with me. He's got to tell me several times, like, hello, are you getting this? He's got to tell me several different ways. And it's been a process. And I'm not there yet. I don't do it perfectly yet, but it is giving me pause when I start to turn to those things that I know aren't contributing to the woman that I want to be. Yeah. Like that is probably going to follow me into the new year of I want to be more disciplined and more intentional about how I spend that spare time so that I'm really investing the time that I need to.
I know when you first started talking about how do you spend your spare time, my first initial thought was, I'm a really good digital farmer. I can farm all that fake corn. One of those silly, stupid
is that one
games?
of those games?
Yeah. Those games where you can I mean, that is nothingness.
Yeah.
And it does not, help me be a real farmer. There is no actual
You can't eat that corn.
benefit. No, I can't eat that corn. It's not giving me anything except distracting me from becoming the person God wants me to become. And I think we've talked about it before, but the quote, no one drifts toward holiness.
Yeah, yeah.
What I'm drifting toward is a really good digital farmer, but I ain't,
get a
doing
badge.
anything towards holiness.
You get overalls.
Yes, I get a badge. I get a really fun badge for being the greatest corn harvester ever.
I'm not going to be able to explain this well, but there is a amazing book, and there's like this grid about things, and it's about priorities. So it's about what you're talking about, and it's like urgent and important.
Ooh, yeah.
And not urgent and not important. And so when you spend so much time in this heightened state of urgent, like you have to do this thing, and I have to go take the child here, I've got to go get the groceries there, I've got to, you're filling your time with these urgent things that are energy drainers. When you get done with that, instead of spending your time doing something important, which is like what you're talking about, contributes to who you want to be, that's important, but it's not urgent. You're putting out fires. So then instead of spending time doing something that contributes to who you want to be, you do the distraction thing, which is the Facebook or the games or any of those things, because you're trying to catch your breath. But then you do that until you have to put out the next fire for the urgent thing. So the important but not urgent things are never seen to.
Yeah. And that's an important thing, because there are some times where you want to live in that quadrant of the unimportant and the not urgent. We do need downtime. We need some, stupid farm games to be able to play.
Right.
But it's when that fills all of our extra time, fills all of our space. We get up and that's the first thing we do, that's when it becomes a problem. And wow, if we
Yes.
spent that time, like you said, Carol, that 4 hours a day on something that drifts us toward holiness instead of drifting us towards other things.
So, and I don't remember where I got this, forgive me, but somebody asked me the question, what are you avoiding by doing that? And maybe it was you, Tricia.
It might have been, because that's something I've been playing around with in my own head.
Yeah. So it might have been you, but that has been a question that, whoo-wee. And I even did this because I know I come off as a goofball, but I'm a pretty deep thinker.
Yes, you are.
And so I put that on my iPad. Not only did I take social media took it off my phone. I can't even get there if I go to the internet on my phone, just because it's not good for me.
Wow.
And I put a sticky note on the iPad that said, "What are you running from?" And so every time I opened that iPad, I was like, "Oh, wow, there's that question again." Now, finally, the stickiness wore off, so it fell off. But it made an impression on my mind. And here's the thing. Like you said, there's nothing wrong with games, and there's nothing wrong with watching your favorite show. I'm not condemning those things, but are they taking you closer to where you want to be?
Yeah.
Because I think so much of our culture tells us that we need to do a Netflix binge, or we need to do this, or we need to do that with our free time. And I just got to the point where I was so frustrated because I would do those things, and then I would feel worse than I did when I started.
Yeah.
Because it wasn't doing anything to build me up
you.
or encourage me, And so I was just frustrated because I was trying to do the things that culture said to do, but I just wasn't fulfilled. And I think that's when God really began to say to my heart, hey, whatever you feed grows.
Yeah.
And so what are you feeding with this choice?
Digital corn.
Absolutely. Digital corn.
Digital corn. I'll tell you that one of the most amazing times that I've had over the last few weeks, we have some property in the middle of nowhere, Yadkinville, and we took the camper down there, and we went down for a weekend, and there was nothing to do. And I chose to spend a lot of time with my journal open, with my Bible open, with a couple of different spiritual books open. And it was so rewarding to just sit there in a camping chair, look out at the wonderful creation that God made, and get my head right and get my space right. And I could have chosen to farm digital corn at that time. And I didn't. And it was really, really good for my soul to spend some time. And I've got the journal, and I'll go back and look at it and refresh myself every once in a while. And it's really helpful.
I bet you slept well. Can you think back?
Oh, yeah.
Did you sleep well?
Yeah.
Because
Sure.
when I have spent time during the day distracting myself with what we're talking about, when I lay down at night, that's when all the things start to come up.
Yeah.
Because I haven't dealt with them during the day. I've distracted and been busy. And then I lay at night and I start to think about all those things. And I know that I should have spent time in stillness with God and addressed some of those things instead of just distracting.
Yeah, that's such an important point.
And here's what I don't want you to hear. I don't want you to hear any ounce of condemnation if you're not doing that. What I'll tell you is it starts 1 minute at a time. If you've got 5 minutes today while you're waiting on a meeting to start, while you're waiting on a kid to get done with practice, while you are driving, do something to feed yourself spiritually. 5 minutes. I'm not saying that all your problems will be solved in 5 minutes, but at the end of that 5 minutes, you can feel good knowing that you've invested in the person that you want to become, rather than just mindlessly listening to whatever it is that you spend your time doing or distracting. Because I think the tendency is that we feel like we have to become spiritual hermits, and we go somewhere and spend days at a time. Because I honestly, I'm a single parent, and so I don't have long stretches of times very often where I can just sit and be with God without a dog barking or my kid needing me. So don't feel like it's the amount of time; it is the effort and the quality of your time. So it can be 5 minutes, it can be 5 hours, whatever works into your schedule and works for your life. That's where it begins. And you will find that after those 5 minutes, 7 minutes, whatever it is, that you'll feel like that was good enough to do again.
Yeah.
And then again, and then again, and then again. And then over the course of days, you'll notice, you know what? That didn't get under my skin like it usually does. Yeah. And guess what? You're going to be able to point back to those times where you invested in yourself spiritually, especially. For me, that's the biggest thing.
You know, for my house, it takes 10 minutes to walk the loop around my neighborhood.
Oh, yeah.
That's an easy walk. You know, if I'm just needing to clear my headspace, go out and do that. And then we've talked before on this podcast about the Dwell app, which is the app. If you haven't heard of it, it's the app where they'll read you scripture.
Yep.
And there's a subscription fee to it, but there's probably other versions out there where they read you scripture, and you can choose the voice that is talking to you, and it's set to music. And so a great thing to do while you're walking around your neighborhood.
I do that in the shower. I listen to that in the shower.
Yeah, that's a good idea. Even that can be
Yeah.
investments.
Yeah.
So don't hear condemnation
Nope.
if you're not doing it. But if you are stressed out and tired of trying to do it all and you are exhausted, could we just suggest that you take that waiting time and turn it into an investment into your life that can pay spiritual dividends, that can refresh you, that can help you to get ready for whatever it is that you're going to be experiencing next in your life or in your family or in your work? Those are the things that we want you to hear today. And know that we're here to love on you and support you. If you've got any questions or want to ask us about anything that you've heard on today's podcast, you're always welcome to email us, girltalk@thelightfm.org. I say this all the time, but we do a little happy dance when we get an email because we just love hearing from you so much. So send us an email with your questions, your comments. We'd love to hear from you. We want to say thank you to our friends at Fox Toyota of East Tennessee for their partnership in ministry. And we'll see you the next time we gather around these microphones for the next Girl Talk podcast.